I am Zach, one of the hosts, and with me is the other host, Chris. What's going on, Chris?
Hello, Zach. Hello, Doug. Hello, everyone around the world and the interwebs. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have an awesome time today discussing some of our favorite topics and discussing Picard. Aren't we,
Yeah,
Zach?
we're back with episode 3 review in our very first ever episode by episode review. We don't normally do those, but we thought that Picard season 3 was worth the cracking the egg, so to speak, on our episode by episode review. And of course, we get the ever talented Academy Award winning makeup artist Doug Drexler back with us to talk more about Picard. Thanks again for being here, Doug.
Thank you, Doug.
He's doing some poses.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Yes, we're all giddy. I'm giddy. I'm giddy about the show. And it's been a while since I've seen the fans take to something like this. It's really thrilling for everybody, and especially us old timers who, felt that we understood the show. And, there was a while there where there was pretty much an embargo against people who had worked on the show. I probably talked about that. Nothing mean-spirited or anything. What happens is you bring in a production designer who wants to do his own thing, or put his, if the producer, the director, or the production designer, they're not geeky fans, they don't understand those kind of subtleties. So it's not obvious to them. It's like nothing mean-spirited about it.
Yeah.
So, it's like you'd rather, like Eves was on the JJ stuff, but he told me he took all his Star Trek stuff out of his portfolio when he went for the job. So there was no Star Trek in it. If you went in there with a bunch of Star Trek stuff, your goose was sure and truly cooked.
Interesting.
Very well, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome to the show. We're a couple of nerdy, geeky guys who talk about everything from Star Trek to Star Wars. And
I'm not geeky at all. The original geek.
That's right. And so, yeah, if this is the first time joining us, be sure to head over to Instagram and Facebook and check us out there. And of course, on our YouTube channel, unless you're watching us, then you already know about it. But we are here with episode number 3 of Star Trek Picard. And our first 2 episodes so far into this season have been very interesting, Chris. There's been a lot of interesting things that have happened, but I don't know that we've had something maybe as interesting as what I feel like happened really late in this episode. And we'll talk about this little kerfuffle between Picard and Riker here in a little while. But there's been some very interesting things that happened here.
There was a lot of action in it, and then there was a lot of very personal interaction in it. So that I thought was good. That I thought provided this great dynamic between characters that have been close for a long, long, long time, and then amazing starship action.
Yeah. So, Doug, you obviously were in LA for the premiere for the first 2 episodes. What did you think when you saw episode 3 for the first time?
Oh, well, I'm just blown away by. It's hard to think that we're only 3 episodes in.
Yeah.
All the stuff that has happened already. And the shows, Terry that guy knows what he's doing. He knows how to build a story over the 10 episodes and keep the goodies coming, which he will. You'll see. That's the most impressive thing to me, that it manages to keep surprising everybody. There's a lot of fun ahead, and there's some things that are just going to like toast your brain.
Well, I will say some of the interpersonal interactions here in this episode, I think there was a little brain toasting that went on there for sure.
Well, that was painful to watch, Riker and Picard kind of butting heads, which is great. It's like, for instance, a lot of people I talked to about Shaw said, I think he's the greatest thing, ever. And people are like, how can you like him? He's a dick. And I'm like, I absolutely was giddy watching him give them a hard time.
Well, there were some other Starfleet officers that were, pretty similar across the different series too. So,
well, you mean in the new series, the new shows?
No, the original series, like Next Gen, DS9, Voyager, all this classic Trek series. Yeah. There's been a slew of Starfleet officers who have been, hard to deal with.
Well, with power comes sometimes. But yeah, I mean, I just filled when I saw episode 3. When I got to 3, I was just filled with admiration for Terry.
Mm.
You know, like, Terry, you know what? I mean, I knew you knew what you were doing, but it's like you really understand the show. But I mean, there's a great moment in episode 3 where I had been watching the fans ridiculing some of the fans ridiculing the show because Jack had a British accent.
Mm.
Where did you get that? And Terry knew that was going to happen and had a scene ready in episode 3 where Picard's like, the British accent? It was really, he anticipated that perfectly.
Yeah. So, Chris, let's jump into this. Let's kind of go back through and let's kind of work our way through this episode and talk about some of the things that stood out to us and things that stood out to you as well, Doug. So we end episode 2 where it's very clear once the Titan kind of jumps in to help save the Helios.
I love that.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool little scene. It's very evident that the Titan is outgunned. I definitely had feelings throughout this episode through the chase scenes and the nebula between the Titan and the Shrike that you saw scenes that reminded me anyways of episodes for scenes from Star Trek Insurrection, right, where the Enterprise E is battling the Sona, and even some scenes in Nemesis between the Enterprise E and the Reman ship, the Scimitar. So did that give you any kind of thoughts with that?
No.
No. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, it still reminded me of Wrath of Khan. I think just having the
yeah. I'm sorry, I don't mean to step on you there. Those are classic storytelling things that you see, from show to show to show that never wear out. I've been around for, you can repeat them over and over again and people will love them because it's just so timeless. And, sorry. Sorry, you were going to talk there. And I
no, all good. I mean, it reminded me of the nebula in Wrath of Khan and going in there, and then all of their sensors are out, so they're relying on different means of visual spotting to see where they are, and that creates a different situation. And so it's kind of neat to see.
It all pivots around the characters, the actors is there. That's what makes it new, And once again, if you look at movies like Run Silent, Run Deep, and with the two submarines, they can't see each other, and they're just crossing each other's paths, and it's classic stuff that we always will draw from.
I think U-571 as well, another World War II movie with the submarine boats and the submarine trying to hide.
Yeah.
I also thought of the episode in Best of Both Worlds, right, where they go try to hide from the Borg in the nebula as well.
Lucky there's a nebula nearby.
Yeah, it's good writing there, I guess, right? But yeah, the nebula affects and interferes with the sensors and obviously the Titan sensors as well. So it becomes that cat and mouse game, hiding. And you get during that kind of scene, we get a flashback, Chris, to Picard and Riker meeting at the celebration of Riker's son, which I thought was Riker and Troy's son, which I thought was a very interesting little flashback there.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And then we get the kind of the history of why the episode is titled the way it is, right? Because Riker talks about 17 seconds. Took him 17 seconds in that turbolift to make it down to see the birth of his child, and it was the longest 17 seconds of his life. But I thought a real kind of intimate moment between Captain Admiral Picard and Captain Riker, and especially for those of us that are parents, we can really identify with those types of moments, and seeing that was interesting. And I also thought, like, seeing Picard's reaction after when Riker says, "Hey, maybe someday in the future you'll have that kind of experience," and you see the reaction right on Picard's face, like you could see a little bit of maybe there's regret or sorrow there, because at that time, he didn't know that he had a son, and he was just thinking about I guess, his connection with family. So very, 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 very neat moment there. And I think with some levity and humor from Counselor Troy, which was great to have there. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting watching as this season unfolds, Doug, and watching to see how Terry decided to introduce these different main characters, right? With episode 2, we got a little snippet of Worf at the very end, and he comes in and starts beheading people.
Oh, that was an awesome reveal. Awesome.
Yeah, especially later on in this episode with one of the lines he says, which we'll get to in a little bit, which I thought was hilarious. But how they brought Worf in, now how they kind of bring Troy into this season for the first time. We're gonna wait and see how they manage to bring Geordi in at some point in this season. I think we might get him in the next episode. That's kind of what my thoughts are. He might show up in the next episode, but yeah, it's really interesting with the molding of these traditional characters from TNG and where they're at now in their lives and how they are coming back into Picard's life and you know what he thinks of them, what they think of him. And it's very different from what Captain Shaw thinks of these two guys, right? And you know, I thought, I will say one thing I did not like about this episode is how, I guess, somewhat easy it seemed like that Captain Shaw decided to, you know, abdicate command to Riker on the bridge. Like, all right, well, you guys just do it.
He had to.
Yeah.
He was like mortally wounded.
Yeah, but I mean, it just
he did it with a little bit of a, you know, stab. He twisted a knife in Riker a little bit, but he had to turn command of the bridge over to Riker. Had to.
Yeah.
Absolutely had to.
I guess that's true. I mean, his first officer was still confined to quarters, so
yeah. I mean, he put 7 in a box. There on the bridge. He's an experienced captain. He's the guy you've got to turn command over to. At first, it seems, you know, like if you don't weigh in how critical and crucial it is, you wonder why he would be turning it over to him. But things are critical. He did the right thing. He did the absolute right thing. He had to.
Yeah. So we get there's a huge explosion on the bridge and they're fighting and everything. We also get a scene where Picard goes down to visit Beverly in sickbay. And Beverly reveals how she became pregnant with Jack 2 months apparently before she was reassigned, but didn't tell Picard about it. I guess she thought that Picard's life was always in danger and therefore Jack's could be in danger. Doug, I'm curious. We've gone all this time without Picard having children or having a wife or anything like that. What's your thought on them bringing, you know, a Jack Crusher, a son for Picard into the show?
Well, you know, it's a great dramatic gimmick, and it was in Wrath of Khan as well. You know, it just gives you an amazing scene that Patrick Stewart and you know, Gates could really sink their teeth in, one that they've never had before. You know,
yeah.
It's a pretty amazing scene. It was difficult. See, there were a lot of scenes that were difficult to watch in a good way. You know, the fact that it rocks you when you see it. I mean, the Beverly and Patrick scene didn't hit me as hard as the Riker Picard scene. That I still feel disturbed and distressed over that. You know.
Yeah.
They've always worked together so well. You know.
Yeah. Chris, what about you? What did you think of Beverly and Picard's scene there? I think as father, that was kind of tough for me to watch a little bit, you know, if I put myself in Picard's shoes, right? And what he felt there and the fact, you remember the line he said, right? Where he's like, you know, you did basically in so many words, he said, you didn't even give me a chance.
I thought that scene was incredible for both Admiral Picard and Dr. Crusher. So you can imagine like the pain that they're both going through. And I thought the scene was the way they both approached it from their own perspective. I could completely see, yes, this is Picard's perspective. Absolutely. And this is Beverly's perspective. Absolutely. Like, because some of the things that Picard says, right. He's in so much pain. But he says, you don't get to condemn me for things that I've done in the past, or that I've shared with you out of confidence, or you don't get to condemn me or make that choice for me out of like assumptions you have made.
I know, but at the
Right.
same time,
Yeah, go ahead.
Picard didn't have to put her through that.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, he could have just said, screw all that other stuff. I'm so happy you're here. I'm so happy you're okay. I can't believe, you know, how about a hug? Everybody could use a
Yeah.
hug right there. You know,
Yeah.
that's kind of, that's the cranky part of Picard, which he's always had, you know.
Yeah.
He shouldn't have done that to her. That was unfair. But that's his character. And I
Yeah.
think it works, you know.
I think you
put her in a terrible spot by coming at her that way.
I think you can, yeah, I think you can see it from both sides a little bit too, right? I think from Picard's side, he's like, hey, you know, I had this son I didn't even know about, and I would have liked to have had a shot, right? Versus, and thinking back to like what you said, Chris, where, you know, she kind of brings up his past and uses his parents as a reason not to tell him, sort of, and that, I think that, Doug, was a foul there. But at the same time, I can also see from Picard in this sense where like, hey, you know, like it would have been nice because now I have a son who's estranged who doesn't want anything to do with me because he doesn't think I cared or didn't want anything to do with him.
I just think he shouldn't have front loaded the anger. You know, that could have been later on. We could deal with that later. Okay. What's important right now is, I mean, I can't believe it, but what can I say? I think that if it had been Riker, he would have handled it differently. I don't think he would have come at Deanna with that kind of anger, you know. I mean, look, you know, Riker making the comment about the sour inspection face, you know, but you know what Riker's face is? It's that mischievous twinkle he has in his eye. You know, that is part of the reason you love Jonathan Frakes as Riker. I mean, he would never come at her that way. But
yeah,
it's just the characters. I thought that it was a knee-jerk reaction on his part to be the captain when she was more than that. You know, and that's part of the reason why she didn't tell you, because you don't have the ability to put that aside. She knows that, you know. So, you know, I think that Beverly was done wrong as far as the meeting. She may have made a mistake. He would listen. She said it herself when he was old enough. I told him where to find you. He's an adult. He could do what he wants. But I still feel a little upset. Picard has messed things up in this episode.
Yeah, he really has. That's true.
He really has.
That's
He's
true,
really like stepped in it, and they've been showing little moments. It's only 3 episodes. They're showing little moments where he can't remember stuff. He's got the wrong, you know, and that's like making you think that maybe he's, you know, losing it a little with old age. And able to make mistakes like that. Picard never should have gotten involved with Riker on the bridge. That was wrong, just like he was wrong with Beverly. He should have just stepped back. He should have gone to his quarters. Let the captain run the ship. If he wants your advice, he'll ask for it. But instead, Picard got in the middle of everything and just made trouble. He made it extra hard for Riker to do anything. It was tough enough already. You know, I love Patrick Stewart and I love Picard, but it's interesting what they're doing with it. It's good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, Picard couldn't disconnect. He couldn't separate himself.
Well, he wasn't obviously not thinking straight. Not the Picard that we knew on the bridge of the Enterprise D. You know,
I think, you know, I as I watch this episode, there are parts of me that I feel like Picard was making decisions, maybe because he looked at people like Riker and Beverly and stuff, kind of how he did when he was still a captain of the Enterprise, almost like in a protective nature, right? Like he's got to step in and make the decisions as a captain because he's trying to protect them and he's trying to make sure that, you know, he gets them out of trouble and everything, and almost kind of that protective parental nature, if that makes any sense.
It's a very emotional reaction that really has no place in a situation like this, you know. Picard made a mistake. Riker didn't want to be in this position, but you know what? It was Picard who got him into this mess. He was trying to help his friend, and now look where he is. I mean, that line where he says, you know, you've killed us all, as Picard goes out the turbo the turbo lift. That's like some heavy shit there, you know?
Yeah. Very heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when Picard and Riker return to the bridge, it's very apparent that Vadic tracks him down and the Titan fires upon them. Shaw gets wounded, as we mentioned. He passes command to Riker. Riker has Picard, launch a photon torpedo. And the concussive blast blows back Vadic and the Shrike. And you start getting into this war. Now, here's the interesting part. Once they're in the nebula and this fighting's been going on, Jack and Seven realize that the ship is leaking something, which is leaving a trail behind. And that's how the Shrike is finding them. And then we learn that there is a saboteur aboard, Chris. And what I found very interesting is that the saboteur was none other than an actor named Chad Lindbergh, who is from my hometown. We went to karate together. We did martial arts in Mount Vernon, Washington together. So if Chad ever listens to this out there, he knows I'm talking about him. And very, very cool to see, somebody I did martial arts with as a kid, now on Picard. First, he was in episode 2. He was the transporter.
Liquid then too, or was it just on the show?
No. He wasn't. He hadn't gained liquid form yet. No, that was later in life, apparently after he did Fast and the Furious and so forth. But we learned there's a saboteur aboard, and Chris, there's quite the little throwback to a certain Star Trek series in this.
Yeah, I was not expecting that throwback.
I don't think anybody was.
Yeah,
no,
but
it was satisfying though.
Yeah, it was. It connects. I felt like, oh, it connects everything then, right? So, it's just neat. It's neat to see it picks off a little bit from DS9 on this thread that we don't know what's been happening, and then all of a sudden, bam, it's here, and I'm loving to see where it goes next, because I love a lot.
Yeah, I love the idea that there is a separate sect of changelings, because now we learn that there's changelings going on, right? That there's a separate sect of changelings who basically said, yeah, we know the Dominion War was over, but we refuse to give up. We refuse to believe the outcome. And now they're going rogue, a rogue group of changelings, right, who have broken off from the Great Lake. I don't know if that was Terry's decision or not, Doug, for that story arc, but it's fantastic, I think. It's very believable. You could believe that there were some changelings after the war that said, you know what? Nah, I don't believe in this outcome. We got to figure out a way to make this, happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was a great surprise. That came out of left field for everybody. There's more surprises ahead. It's like I keep going back and saying, only 3 episodes in, and look at all that we're speculating on. All the, the wiring trunk of this thing is amazing. But Terry, take a look at 12 Monkeys and see how intricate that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, not to go back to episode 2, but God, what's his name who played the Ferengi? He was the lead on 12 Monkeys. That is one of the greatest Ferengis ever. He's right up there with Quark.
He was a devious Ferengi.
He was great. Oh, you know what? I love it where he picks up I forgot what it was that he offers her, and
drugs.
Drug, and then he goes, "Ooh la la, you nasty girl." Ooh la la. I loved it. It was such a he was great. That's one thing. The Borg Queen in season 2.
Annie Worsing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
She added so much to that character. It was a pretty much one-dimensional character, although I liked it in First Contact. But this one had a nasty sense of humor. That was some good stuff there.
Yeah, rest in peace, Annie. I was very fortunate enough at the convention last year to meet her. I almost didn't. And then the last day, I think I stopped by her table and chatted with her, and very lovely woman. Very unfortunate to have seen her passed. I guess she had been battling cancer in private, and just gave
going
up.
through it at the same time that I was going through it with Dorothy.
Yeah.
I know what that's like.
Yeah, and she left some young family behind too. So it's really sad. Did you ever watch, Doug? Did you ever watch the show Timeless? It was on NBC. It was a time travel show.
No.
So she was one of the main characters who starts out good and then flips and becomes bad in that. It only lasted 2 seasons, which was unfortunate because it was really, really good. There was the lead actor in that name was Matt Lanter. He did the voice of Anakin in the Star Wars Clone Wars animated series and stuff, and really, really good series. If you ever get a chance to check it out, it's probably streaming on Peacock or something like that, I'd imagine. But
I haven't seen a Star Wars since The Empire Strikes Back.
oh,
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No.
You never saw Return of the Jedi? Oh, yeah, Return of the Jedi is great too. But
That was one with the Ewoks, right?
yep, the little
I
teddy
think that's
bears.
why I didn't go see it.
Well, Star Wars had the Porgs and the new stuff and the Ewoks, and Star Trek has the Tribbles, so it works. It's kind of crossover, but
Don't cross the streams.
that's
I
right.
tell people who sneak Star Wars stuff into Star Trek, which infuriates me.
Yeah.
Do not cross the streams.
That's right.
Don't try to make one like the other.
Yep.
Don't put any Star Wars jokes in. Orville can get away with that, but I don't think Star Trek should do it.
Yeah. So as we continue, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, there's right, the changelings, right? So we've got
Yep.
we still don't know anything, or I don't think we know anything about Captain Vadic. You've got these now we've got the changelings here, which is
awesome.
I know. And so
She is having such a ball.
yeah, you've got all these major kind of antagonists that are here now.
She goes head to head with Ricardo Montalban any day. Right up there with him. I mean,
Yeah, she's unsettling, right? So she
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You saw her in Pulp Fiction, right?
yes.
On top of the counter with the gun. Man, she was amazing in that. Perfect casting. Perfect. And she is just eating it up with a spoon. And I love some of the stuff. I mean, when she's giving commands on the bridge of the Shrike to fire, it's so underplayed and low key, and it's just like fire.
Yes.
Yeah, there's no emotion behind it. It's so cold blooded.
Yeah, it's awesome.
She's
I
just
love her.
ready to make it happen.
Love her.
Besides the cat and mouse game in the nebula between the Titan and the Shrike, we also
That's the point I wanted to make earlier, and I forgot to get it in there. Originally, we thought it was going to be the Stargazer all the way through.
Oh.
And Terry made a decision. It was the right one. I was disappointed because I wanted to see more of the Stargazer. But his decision was really ultimately right to make it a ship that was like a lower level ship. Because I would expect the Stargazer is a pretty muscular ship. I'd expect it to turn around and give a pretty damn good account of itself. Instead, they're on this lower level ship that's running for its life. And it creates the sense of, danger, definitely. And that's all I have to say about that.
Well, you're right, because I mean, both Captain Shaw and Captain Riker on multiple times they're saying to Picard, they're saying, "Hey, we're outgunned. We're outgunned. We gotta get away. We can't fight. It doesn't matter. We're gonna lose." Yeah, that's interesting.
But I did notice, and maybe it's because he was captain of the Stargazer and the flagship of the Enterprise at one point. Picard kept saying, "We got to fight, Will. We got to fight. Turn around and fight." And that's kind of what leads down that
That's not like
fight.
Picard.
I know.
We saw him in Farpoint.
It makes you wonder.
Turned around and surrendered.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if he knows something about this Captain Vadic that no one else does. He doesn't want to say it, and that's why he's like, "We got to fight." Because he doesn't want something maybe to come out that others don't know. I'm not sure.
Well, I kind of lean. I'm not saying that this is it, but I lean towards the idea that he's losing his faculties a little bit. Because then he puts himself in self-doubt. He'll be afraid to make a move. Look what I've done. I've screwed up everybody's. Will's son is going to grow up without a father. Deanna's not going to have a husband anymore. Seven is going to die. Everybody's going to die because of me.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if some of the events from season 1 and 2 also play into that self-doubt. Gotta be, right? I mean, after what he saw in the alternate universe or alternate timeline and so forth.
Yeah.
I would think that would play into it.
Yeah. I have no doubt. I really enjoy what they did, and I can see why they did what they did, especially like in the first season with Picard on the farm. I would see where Patrick would say, "Well, I get to show a different side of my character here, very different." it's kind of like when we went from Battlestar Galactica to Caprica,
Mm.
and the show didn't take off because people were expecting killer robots and big explosions, and instead the writers decided that they wanted to do something that relied less on visual effects and try to make a hit with a talkier, and I don't mean talky in a bad way, but
Yeah.
more complicated interpersonal relationships and stuff. And it kind of fell flat because that's what the audience was looking for. People watch Picard, and yeah, I think that especially when you put them all together and you see that they finally end up in that place that you love, people will relax and enjoy the very personal, like first season. But a lot of Star Trek fans are really tough, and then when you tune in and there aren't even any starships, it's like that's hard to get a handle on.
Yeah.
I think that once all 3 seasons drop, it's going to retexture the first 2 seasons for people.
Yeah, kind of hopefully tie everything together a little bit. So Chris, besides the battle in the nebula, there is another storyline going on here that I find very, very fascinating.
Terrific storyline with Worf and Rafi. Absolutely terrific.
Oh, I love them together.
Yeah.
She's awesome, first of all.
Yeah, fantastic duo between them. We learn, just some glimpses, but learn more about Worf. I loved how Michael Dorn played Worf. He seemed like, so if we go from Deep Space Nine and the movies, so he's so much more, he's wise, right? He's like this wise samurai warrior.
But the Worf sense of humor is that's a thread that goes through all of it,
Yes.
Yeah.
His delivery of funny lines is just spot on. Michael Dorn is the greatest, we spent a lot of time in the makeup trailer together. So although I knew them all really well because I was in the makeup trailer, but I spent, Dorn would have a few hours of makeup. Jerry Quist would be doing it, and I'd be usually working next to him. And, you really get to know someone after a while. I mean, you could be on shows and 10 years later, they won't remember your name, but still, when Michael Dorn saw me at the Chinese theater, he used to like to yell my name out like 3 times, Drexler, 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 in his Dorn way. And it never misses a beat. 20 years go by, don't matter. It's awesome.
I'm curious, Doug, did they use the original forehead ridges, the mold to make his ridges for Picard?
I'm sure they didn't.
Different. Okay.
Sure
you didn't? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, those molds are probably
really old now.
calcified, and
yeah,
they could do better now. They could get better edges. I don't know.
They look different, but very similar.
Yeah, I mean, they look. I'm sure they kept it pretty close to what it was. I mean, you don't go changing stuff like that except for subtly. The change in the hair makes the whole forehead look different too.
Yeah.
We used to have that Prince Valiant cut for a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he looks terrific, and it's just the weaving everybody in so beautifully.
Worf is the perfect, I think, role model for Rafi at Rafi's point in her life, right? I think Worf can offer Rafi some wisdom.
I love that he was her handler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people didn't get that in episode 2. They didn't when he's taking her out and he says, "I told you not to engage."
Yeah.
I was like, he's the handler. But a lot of people, I just went right by. They didn't get it until, the 3rd episode. But yeah, I thought that was fantastic. The all the artifacts in Sneed, perfect name for for Sneed, perfect. The baseball and costumes, and people are asking me, is that Ben Sisko's baseball? I have a funny feeling that Quark is probably cranking them out by the hundreds. I'd love to see him again.
Oh gosh, yeah. Anytime you can bring in some characters from Deep Space Nine, I'd be a happy man.
The Ferengi they really took, I thought, one of their weakest villains, and on Deep Space Nine turned them in. Well, it first started changing with like Captain's Holiday.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And then when they did Deep Space Nine and they got Max and Armin and Nog and
Aaron and Iron Eisenberg and everything too. Yeah.
they worked, on their lunch hours. Those guys used to get together and rehearsed, in the trailers and Little Green Men. See that?
Yeah, that was a great one.
My favorite Ferengi episode of all time is probably the Magnificent Ferengi, where Rom and Quark go to save Moogie, and they hire all these random, Ferengi come along, ex-liquidator Brunt, and then the I can't remember the Ferengi who's like the gun for hire. He doesn't care about profit. He's like schwacking people. But they really did, and Armin mentions about having them, I think, over at his house to rehearse stuff and everything, which paid off on screen. So
yeah, definitely. I love the one where they do Ocean's 11.
Yeah,
they go
bada bing,
Las
bada
Vegas.
bang. I think, right?
Yeah, I think so. It's funny. Now I love Frank Sinatra, and I saw him a whole bunch of times. And Ira Bear was a big Sinatra fan at the time as well.
Me too.
And
me too.
Well,
love Frank Sinatra.
Well, the thing was that they did that episode where Nog lost a leg.
Yep.
And he escaped into the Hollow Suite in Vic's and was living in Vic's apartment.
Yep.
And it wasn't until years later where it struck me that they were doing Sammy Davis Jr. Sammy had an auto accident. He lost an eye in an auto accident. And he retreated to Frank's apartment and was living there and wouldn't come out. And Frank ultimately threw him out, just like Vic did. And I ran into Ira Bear in the bookstore in Studio City. I said, I only just realized that you were doing the Sammy story, and he just had this big grin on his face.
That's awesome. Yeah, I thought Sneed was very well done for this series. It's cool to see them throw in something like the Ferengi. The Ferengi, I think, are very undervalued in the Star Trek franchise.
Well, and they returned them to more or less the Ferengi that we're familiar with from the the shows in the 90s, and because I'd seen some Ferengi, I don't know if they were from Discovery, but they really changed the makeup. They had bat wing ears, and they tried to make them meaner looking or something. Ferengi are meant to be goofy looking. They should, because that's where you're deceived by their appearance. Of course, the makeup was a little more compact on him. Some people say, well, he's got awfully small lobes. I go, well, everybody's different.
Yeah.
In real life, they don't all, aren't pressed out of the same mold.
That's true. That's true. So on the kind of subplot here with Raffi and Worf, I found it very interesting, Chris, that we got Worf revealing himself as a subcontractor, right? Like, think of me as like a subcontractor, right? Like that's that Worf humor, right?
Well, he's not unlike Paladin and Have Gun Will Travel now, I guess. Remember Have Gun Will Travel?
Mm-hmm.
That was the show Roddenberry cut his teeth on, the Western with Richard Boone, where he was kind of a, for hire. He was a good mercenary, kind of. And I could see where that kind of ties into to Worf there.
Yeah, he feels
their interests are all aligned.
Yeah, he feels like a Ronin right now. We'll see how it develops, but he feels like this Ronin samurai.
Oh yeah, the Klingon casual wear.
Yeah, casual wear.
Oh yeah, where he picks the dude up and body slams him onto the table. That was epic. Oh my gosh, that was epic. I'm like, he's chopping people's heads off, he's body slamming people, and then he makes that joke about how beheadings are on Wednesdays or whatever. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
He uses his personality when they're interrogating that changeling. Rafi's approach to interrogating is very, very hard, and
she's like Starbuck on a Cylon.
Yeah. And then Worf is very, hey, I don't mean you any harm.
Oh, that's hilarious, really.
Good cop, bad cop kind of thing is what I was thinking. Yeah, very interesting. And I thought it was fascinating too, because I was talking about this with a friend of mine, and I thought it was cool that we don't just get Worf in this episode as a continuation from TNG. We get him as a continuation from the time he was on Deep Space Nine and the movies, and it's not just, we're going to just skip over all that and just take him from the time at the end of TNG. So I thought that was very smart move on
it also
Terry and the writers.
So many other stories. What was he doing all this time?
Exactly.
Show, all by itself.
Yeah. I think, and I wonder too, Chris, and correct me if I'm wrong here. the way that Worf has become now in Picard season 3, where he's kind of he's trying to be peaceful and he doesn't, maybe think the same way he used to when he's on DS9. I wonder, does it come across to you, Chris, as maybe Jadzia's death in Deep Space Nine affected him so greatly, and the war with the Dominion, that maybe he's like, you know what, enough bloodshed. I want to, I want to go a different, more peaceful route than I've lived.
When you lose a loved one like that, believe me, I know it rewires your brain.
Yeah.
It changed me emotionally. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I can see that. All of that goes into it. And I think it's his evolution, right? Evolution as a warrior, someone that's loved, that's lost a loved one. And so he's kind of evolved.
A lot of time around human beings.
Yeah.
He learned something.
Yeah. I really like his character. I mean, his line, the line that he says to Rafi, he says something like, "I've been working on myself."
Right? Say,
right.
I burst out laughing.
I love that.
Yeah. So while attempting to repair the Titan's warp core, Jack's intercepted by another changeling who subdues him. This was Chad Lindbergh, who I grew up, well, not grew up with, but I did martial arts with when I was a kid growing up. And there's some very dangerous chemicals. And this, I think, the foreshadowing where Riker is headed down that turbo lift, and it's the longest 17 seconds. We then get Picard in a very similar situation, right? Where he heads down to see Jack, who he hears has been injured, and he's riding that turbo lift down. Chris, how did you feel? I'll ask you in just a second, Doug, but I want to get each of your thoughts on this. What was your feeling when you saw Picard and that slow zoom in of him on the turbo lift in that 17 seconds?
Yeah, that I think is a very personal, hard feeling for all of us. Like if we've got children, family, loved ones, and that they're in danger. Oh, yeah. that was hard for me to watch, honestly. So it was like oh, it brings it very close to people that have had that experience. So very.
Yeah. What about you, Doug? What did you see in that scene?
Well, I don't have any children. I have a parrot. But I've gone through similar things over the last 2 years with Dorothy, where I'm on my way to the hospital and she's been taken by the ambulance. And, I mean, you're in a state of shock, you're not letting yourself feel yet because you might have to make important decisions, you try to stay clear, but there's a part of you that that feels disconnected from everything, the universe. You don't know what your place is anymore. I mean, I know he doesn't know Jack. He doesn't know Jack, but he doesn't know Jack Crusher. So there's he knows intellectually that this is his son, but they've never had a chance to build any, emotional intimacy at all. Mm-hmm. They've hardly even talked to each other, so it's really hard to know how he might be feeling when he's going down there. I think he's probably more in the Twilight Zone and thinking, where am I? What's going on? How did I get here? Mm-hmm. I was fine at Chateau Picard. Everything was great. I have a beautiful girl looking after me, and what the hell went wrong? It's just everything just exploded. I've been there, believe me. Last couple of years, my life exploded. Mm-hmm. So I have the Twilight Zone feeling myself. I get it, and I don't know what's going on either. Isn't there a line where he says, "Well, when please tell me," because even at this point in his life, he doesn't understand anything.
Yeah, something he says to Seven, I think episode 2. Like, when you figure it out, tell me. I never.
Yeah, right. Let me know. Yeah, because I don't know yet either.
Yeah, when I saw that scene of him in the turbo lift, my thoughts were, he's going down almost, and it came across to me on screen, reading his face, like, the Twilight Zone kind of image came into mind, but also this idea of regret, right? Like, I didn't, what happens if he dies? Like, I I never got to know him, you know. So I read a lot of regret on his face in that scene, going down that turbo lift, and that would be a long, whether it's a child or another loved one, that would be an incredibly long ride. Like, you think you just cannot get there fast enough.
Yeah, it's like I said, there's no emotional ties here yet. Intellectually, he understands this. It's not the same thing as, loving someone emotionally, in an intimate, emotional way for 32 years. And now you're on your way down to sick bay where they may be dying.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be the same. It can't.
Yeah. Yeah. So as we move towards the end of the episode, we get this scene, and I've had a few friends of mine who are very purist Star Trek fans, and they did not like the way this scene happened between Picard and Riker. The fact that that Riker blows up at Picard the way he does. But this is a very interesting scene in this episode to have a discussion about.
They're wrong.
Where Picard convinces Riker to stand and fight. The strategy proves incredibly disastrous. And it's obviously evident when Vadic reveals that she's in possession of this stolen Daystrom weapon, and uses it against the Titan to literally shoot itself, right, with the torpedoes and everything. And then it sinks into the gravity well into the center of the nebula. This is where the enraged Riker orders Picard off the bridge as the crew potentially is falling to its fate, and Riker blows up and says, "This is your fault. You killed us all. Get off my bridge." I'll start with you, Doug, on this one. What were your thoughts when you first watched this scene?
It was brilliant. It's the best thing they could have done. Do I want the same old story where they, are skipping hand in hand and it's all working because they're so good with each other? That's not that interesting. I'm sure we're going to have moments like that, though, and we have had already. But I could see exactly. I mean, Riker's thinking about his family.
Yeah.
At that moment, I'm leaving I'm leaving Deanna a widow. My son is going to grow up without a father. Why did I listen to you? I listened to you because of what Shaw was saying, because I'm loyal. Misguided loyalty. I wasn't thinking like a captain. I was dealing with my friend, Jean-Luc Picard. He knows he made some mistakes by not throwing him off the bridge immediately. That's what he should have done. He should have thrown him off the bridge once Picard started inserting himself too hard against what the captain thought was right. It's amazing he didn't throw him off sooner. He should have, but I totally get why he didn't. I'm glad they did that. If they hadn't have done that, I wouldn't be stressing over it right now. For the next episode, I'm actually stressing over their relationship. That's great drama. If you're sleeping like, oh, aren't they smart? Aren't they, to get out of this mess? That's not half as interesting, And if it had happened in the middle of TNG, that would be wrong. They're so interwoven on that show. But it's been 20 years. They don't even know whether they could talk to each other anymore, So he's doing things he would never have done 20 years ago because of emotional ties. And it's really, it's an interesting situation to thrust them into. And can you imagine how Picard feels? Can you imagine how Riker feels? Can you imagine how everyone in the ship feels? The captain who he knew right away. Shaw knew right away that those two guys on the ship was going to spell disaster. He knew it.
Yeah. That's why he was trying to avoid it, right? And then Seven went behind his back and helped him out. And
false loyalty there. She did the right thing according to Starfleet.
Yeah.
It's almost like in A Wrath of Khan, by the book. Sometimes you should be following what the book has. And then you have these moments like Seven did where it's like, well, the book isn't working in this case. And I trust these two guys. And if it wasn't for Picard, I wouldn't even be in Starfleet. And so I have to do like Kirk did in Search for Spock, steal the Enterprise. She was stealing the Enterprise there, basically, while Shaw was in his rack. Oh, man, I love the way Terry has been working with the the composer, to use musical cues, all the best musical cues that you've known and loved in movies and TV shows in the past. It just rings those psychological bells that, the sense memory comes pouring back. The other shows, other movies, they've pretty much ignored the music that come before. I think Star Trek the Motion Picture, I was so disappointed that, I like the Jerry Goldsmith theme, but I think that the original series theme was used kind of grudgingly over a captain's log about halfway through when Mr. Spock has come on board and he's tinkering with the intermix formula. That's like the only time you hear it, but Terry, God damn it, he understands the emotions tied in with some of those musical cues, like Enterprise leaving dry dock and,
Did you? I wasn't sure if I was imagining this on a musical cue, but in the Nebula, I thought in episode 2 that I had sensed a musical cue from Wrath of Khan. I wasn't sure. Yeah,
I'm sure they did. They use tonalities like V'ger over the Shrike, which I think is awesome because it gives this feeling, this, Leviathan thing, that's so freaking huge and powerful. I don't think I've ever seen musical scores used so effectively in a series in forever. I mean, he's taking advantage of stuff that's really powerful in people's psyche as far as being Star Trek fans, and taking advantage of it when it hasn't been done at all in the past.
Yeah, the music's been fantastic. You definitely do get the hints and notes from recognizable music from other movies and series for sure. Which I think has been great. It's a way to mix in some old with some new.
Brilliant. It's really brilliant. I mean, that's one of the standout things about the show. The choices that Terry's made as far as what we're going to use. And I want that he knows all the shows. He knows all the movies so well. He remembers musical cues that left certain impressions on him.
Yeah.
If you just bring in a producer or showrunner who's never even seen Star Trek before, you think he's going to do that? Of course not. There's no way. Right. But Terry knows. I want this because I know how people are going to react to it. And I know what it makes me. It sets off my sense memory. I haven't forgotten it in 25 years, and he knows just where to plug it in. And the fans go, oh my God, that's, that earns loyalty like you can't believe from people who love the show.
Right.
Nothing makes fans more pissed off than when you just throw something out or you change something or that doesn't follow anymore, Anyway,
nostalgia is huge, right? Nostalgia is a huge thing. It's very powerful, and Star Trek is no exception. So
everyone loves comfort, whether it's comfort food or it's using musical cues and things that call back from the past is the same thing as having a fantastic meatloaf with gravy and a baked potato. It's the same damn thing. Yep. It's comfort food.
Yep.
And human beings are always going to react to that, and there's nothing wrong with it. And a lot of people were saying in the very beginning, there were reviewers who were commenting about, slavishly using nostalgia. No, I think they've done a great job using the nostalgia. It's brilliantly done. Brilliantly done. I mean, I know what's going to happen in most of these scenes, and I'm still moved by it,
So, Chris, what about you? What were your thoughts and feelings about this really intense, potentially, I would even argue, controversial scene between Riker and Picard on the bridge?
It's a relationship changing moment for them too. But I wanted to give props to Doug brought up some just amazing things like on loyalty and friendship. But I also want to give props to Captain Shaw, because Captain Shaw in this moment, right, he's the only one that objectively said, how are they finding us? How are they finding us? He was the only one objective and detached enough to kind of say that to Jack, and he kind of says that, and then they're able to figure out, okay, how they're finding us. But that moment between Admiral Picard and Captain Riker, amazing and hard, very, very hard to watch, and because they have such a deep relationship formed over so many years, right? But Riker is, you can't forget, Riker has all this experience of himself as a captain by himself. He's captained the Titan for for many, many years. And he's also a great tactician himself in Starfleet battle. So he's got all that. But having Picard there, he's got that immense sense of loyalty because he's a good person. So he's got this friendship and loyalty to Picard, and there's that conflict, within him, and that gets in the way of his objective judgment for the situation, right? That kind of messes things up. So after the events have unfolded, I can't imagine what's going through Riker's mind either. Like, why didn't I trust my gut, like objective feeling to do what I think we should have done? And now look where we're at. I'm sure he's angry at himself. He's angry at Picard. He's angry at the situation. And you see that expression on his face, like this.
That's part of the reason I think that in the military, where you have a captain of a ship and stuff like that, they will keep a different distance between themselves and the crew to not befriend captain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it might make us, making a decision difficult later on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's some importance there of being detached, and you think back right to the way Picard was detached in a certain sense during TNG. I mean, yeah, he was, the way he treated his bridge crew and the relationships he had with them was important. But there was a certain amount where he could call somebody into his ready room, rip them a new one, and then as they're turning around, say, "Hang on a second," and then come back and say, this is why it's this way, and kind of still let them understand that, I still appreciate you, I still support you, but this is the way it's got to be. I've got to be the captain when I need to be a captain. And he wasn't that way.
Do you remember, I don't remember the name of the episode, Picard falls in love with a crew person?
Oh yeah. Lessons. Yes. The girl who plays the fold out piano. Yep.
They realized that he was making decisions based on his affection for her.
Yep.
Now he's not an effective captain anymore. It's the same question.
Yeah, I think Riker finally got to that point. That the blow up here we're talking about in the bridge, right? He finally gets to the point where he's like, I've got to be the captain, and I need you off my bridge. Our relationship, everything that's gone on has gotten in the way. It's caused me to, make decisions I should not have made as a captain. And so I think you begin to see the wheels turning in Riker, and he's like, yeah, no, enough is enough.
But you can't really blame Picard for that. He did it.
Yep.
He let himself be swayed. That's not what a captain is supposed to do.
Yep.
And
Riker was really good at not doing that, right? Remember Best of Both Worlds Part 2, where Commander Shelby tries to get him to do certain things. He's like, no, eventually, like I'm the captain right now, and I need you to find your place. Or even when he's still, the first officer, and she's trying to go around him, and he has to put her in her place and say, no, look, this stuff goes through me. So I think. Yeah, exactly. The chain of command there. And so I think you saw some of that was broken by the relationship that Riker and Picard already had.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Picard hasn't been active in a long time. Hasn't captured.
He's a little out of the game, right?
Huh?
He's a little out of the game, right? Especially when
and they pointed that out. We've seen it.
Yeah, Seven was like, oh, Admiral, we don't do that anymore. We don't call down to the engineering and tell them we're going to go warp 9.99.
Well, we're being set up there to not be sure he knows what's going on all the time. Riker, he doesn't have a chair. I don't know how long he's been out of it. And he has other things on his mind, like his family, and he's not an effective captain anymore either, maybe. And like I said, no matter what you think of Shaw, and he may have been abrasive and, nasty, but he was the only one who was making the right decision about this. He said, oh, no, we're not going there. Denied. He was right.
Yeah, he was detached from everything because he doesn't have the relationship with them that Seven does.
He's being a captain.
Yep.
She was not being a good first officer.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I love her in it. I think she's absolutely great. It's the best thing I've seen her do in Star Trek. She's really something. They've done a great job with her.
Yeah.
Yeah. The development of her character has been fantastic, especially, coming out of Voyager and then, coming back into this series as Seven and Annika and Seven again. So as we kind of wrap this up, let's kind of share some of our final thoughts from this episode number 3. Chris, what are some thoughts that you have as a whole of this episode, and where maybe what you're hopefully looking forward to seeing in episode 4?
Well, I am looking forward to seeing how they get out of the situation that they're in right now, sinking to the gravity well, and hopefully they're able to make it through okay. The episode left me feeling like my gut, like all tied up.
That's good.
That's how it left me. It was very, very it was personal.
That's great. And it wasn't just Riker and Picard, it was Picard and Beverly.
Yeah.
2 really hard scenes in one show.
Yeah. I mean, they've packed
the
more
third episode.
I was going to say, Doug,
they
packed more into these. They packed enough into this 3 episodes that could have filled a whole season with drama.
Well, the thing is that very often on these nowadays, where you have 10 shows, they take an hour script and stretch it out over across 10 hours. It's one concept.
Yeah.
And Terry's doing that, but they've loaded it with so much, interpersonal, emotional shit going on that it makes you feel. Listen, if you ever watch A Have Gun Will Travel, which was like 1957 to 62 or something, they were 22 minutes long, and you'd watch them and you'd think you just watched an hour. They were so tight, and of course that's where Roddenberry learned to write the type of stories that we see on Star Trek, on Have Gun Will Travel.
Yeah. So Doug, give us some of your final thoughts on episode number 3.
Well, I mean, it's like, I can't say that, we talked about the emotional impact that some of that stuff had. I basically know what's going to happen and how they get out of stuff, so I'm not like hanging on that. I'm just really enjoying. More evidence. Anyone should be able to see it now that Terry has carefully crafted all the beats of this thing and to build as we go along. And to me, that's the amazing thing about it, and and using the characters in such a way that it turns you inside out a little bit. Do you really want business as usual? You want to just retread what you did 20 years ago? I don't think so. Why would you want to do that? They can't possibly be the same people after 20 years. Impossible.
Yeah.
If you're expecting them to be the way they were on the bridge of the Enterprise D 20 years ago, well, that's lazy. That would be lazy writing, So I'm just impressed with all the emotional stuff that Terry has managed to dredge up, and it's great. I can't wait. I can't wait for some of the stuff that is going to be revealed. That's it's like they're hanging on it. Right? How are they going to get out of this? And I'm thinking, just wait till you see.
Yeah. We can't wait. I would have to agree that we're at the point now with this show where it's hard watching Star Trek and going, man, I got to wait a whole nother week to watch this, versus watching older series where you just put in the next episode and you're good to go.
Well, you have to, for me, this is very nostalgic because I watched the original series first run, and I was a very literate kid. I mean, I knew science fiction, and Star Trek was like nothing. There was good stuff, it was Twilight Zone and things like that, but it was so different, so unusual, had so much to say. I would count it aired on Thursday nights, just like Picard is, out on Thursdays.
Yep.
And I used to, as a kid, after the episode, I'd be there in a state of hypnosis. I couldn't, and I immediately saying 6 more days, 5 more days, 4 more days, I would count the days down every morning. First thought in my mind at the age of 13, I guess, and now I'm waiting for the next episode of a Star Trek I'm really interested in. I haven't been interested in one really in a long time. And it's on Thursdays. And, you'd have to wonder if that was thought. I doubt very much that they knew what they were doing when they did that, but it really, it did something to me as far as sense memory goes.
Yeah.
For Thursday.
Yep. Same. Yeah. I overall, I thought this episode was packed full of drama. It was packed full of action. You know what, watching episode 3, I don't know how you guys felt. It, in particular, episode 3 felt like a Star Trek movie. This really felt like a Star Trek movie in the sense of the production, and it was very, very dramatically driven. It had like you could have made this one episode into a movie.
Well, I mean, the thing is, you have to admit that the movies, the TV shows get more into interpersonal stuff.
Right.
You have time to walk down a corridor and just talk about something. And movies tend to be car chases with battles and desperate situations. I mean, of course, the TV show is always going to have a desperate situation every episode, but the third episode felt like a Star Trek movie because almost every Star Trek movie has that kind of desperate scene with a big battle and stuff like that. But it's not your typical Star Trek. It's typical of some Star Treks, They're managing to get the interpersonal stuff in there and have the, with Riker watching, what's his name, walking back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. You probably wouldn't have had that in the Wrath of Khan. It's more like a television thing to do that. You slow down for a minute.
Dare I say this episode was the best of both worlds? I'm here all week, folks. I'm here all week.
Well, that's because Terry understands all the things that make Star Trek. And he's he's amazingly, the way he's woven all of this stuff into Picard. All the things that you're dying to see, you want to hear, the musical cues, it's really well crafted, really well crafted.
Yeah, and I love in this episode the Deep Space Nine references with the Dominion War, the Changelings. I mean, the idea that potentially the Changelings are coming back to infiltrate Starfleet again because you have a rogue group of them. And then, oh, by the way, if people didn't catch this maybe subtle or not so subtle reference that Worf mentions about an honorable man of his that he knew mentioned this whole thing, and that's obviously in reference to Odo, which I don't think we're going to get Odo back in this series because Renee has left us, but it's just great to see some of these callbacks to other series besides just Deep Space Nine. They've referenced Voyager before several times. And so to me, this is a great job, like you said, Doug, of Terry understanding the franchise, not just understanding this show that he wants to do it kind of in a vacuum. It's understanding the franchise as a whole and how everything fits together in its pieces.
Yeah. If you don't, it's like I said before, if you don't get it, you don't get it,
Yeah.
And it takes more than just getting a job. If they bring you in as a producer, it doesn't mean it's when you bring someone in who's a producer who was weaned on it and grew up on it and loved it and has the big picture in his head already. That's why Dave Blass brought me in, brought Mike Okuda in. Eves had been there for a while because we already spoke the language. You bring in an illustrator, it might be terrific, but now you've got to explain what a warp core egress hatch is and a what?
Yeah.
No,
Jeffrey's tube and all that. Yeah.
They don't know. And most of the time they're Star Wars kids. A lot of, you'll get people who are really terrific, but Star Trek, I really grew up on Star Wars and they would rather be doing Star Wars, and I've had people try to push Star Trek towards Star Wars. I've had debates with some people about that. They're saying, well, even if it makes it better, I'm like, even if it makes it better, do not make it like Star Wars. It's been its own thing for a half a century and it should remain that way. Don't dilute it. Gene would never do that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this has been fun as always, Doug, talking with you, and thanks for coming on with us and sharing your thoughts on this episode number 3 as we work our way through Picard season 3.
Yeah, give me a microphone. I'll do 4 hours.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Chris, I know you're excited. I'm excited. Doug, we're all excited to see where this thing goes. Doug has a little more insight than we do, but we are all excited. And we know those of you out there listening are also excited to see where Picard season 3 heads. And we look forward to talking more as we come back and talk about Picard season 3, episode 4 on our next review of this series. As Doug's schedule allows, we'll try to get him on as much as we can to take us through this journey of Picard season 3, and we look forward to sharing more with you. So again, Doug, thank you so much for being with us again.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's always fun.
Absolutely. Yep. And Chris, are you looking forward to also Star Wars Mandalorian season 3?
I am. We'll see how that goes. Season 3. So I did get to watch the first episode, and then we'll be able to connect on that and share our thoughts. So
absolutely. So yeah, absolutely. So thank you everyone so much for watching. Be sure to again go to Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and check us out there. Be sure to follow Doug on Instagram and Facebook. Aren't you on Instagram? Oh, you're not. Well, maybe somebody made an account for you then. Because there's a Doug.
I started one, but I've never used it.
Oh, you never used it. Okay. Well, he definitely is active on Facebook, so be sure to go there and check him out there. But we will look forward to the next review of Picard season 3. And until then, we'll catch you next time right here on the Random Redshirt podcast.